My name is Amanda. I was 27 when I realized something wasn't right. It was one of those cool, overcast Sundays where even the sky feels uncertain. I just finished a 12-hour shift at the clinic and was driving on autopilot when Mom's text popped up. Can you stop by? Need to talk about planning things right? I assumed it had something to do with their anniversary or maybe Dad's next knee appointment. I didn't expect to walk into their kitchen and see a glossy wedding magazine sprawled open like a roadmap I wasn't supposed to follow. You planning a secret vow renewal? I asked with a tired smile, shrugging off my scrubs jacket. Mom looked up from her tea. No, honey, we're just thinking ahead, in case anything ever comes up. She flipped a page, calm and practiced. I wasn't even seeing anyone seriously. The last guy I introduced to them disappeared after 6 months. They never asked why, so the talk of weddings felt misplaced, or worse, deliberate. She sipped her tea like we were just neighbors chatting about someone else's life. If anything happens, well, we wouldn't be able to help much. Not financially, not after the year we've had. It landed softer than it should have. I nodded, said thank you, and tucked the warning into the quiet place where I store all their future no's. That's what I do. I absorb. I assist. When my sister Rachel had an emergency C-section and needed help moving apartments, I packed her entire kitchen in 2 days. When Dad was in post-op and forgetting his meds, I took time off work and slept on a plastic chair just to keep him safe. I never asked for thanks. So when Rachel called months later, giddy and breathless, saying she was engaged, I cheered. I let her excitement fill my silent apartment. Her fiancé sounded kind, thoughtful. She told me about the Charleston proposal, the lighthouse, the photos, the ring, and I genuinely smiled. The group chat exploded soon after. Venue options, floral inspiration, Pinterest links, I offered help with logistics, spreadsheets, vendor timelines, the stuff no one wants to touch. Rachel called me the organized one. I clung to the compliment like a handrail. Then, a week later, came Mom's message. We're covering most of it. It's a special moment for Rachel. We want her to have what we couldn't give her before. I didn't respond right away. I stared at the text until the screen dimmed. The words weren't cruel. They were clinical, but something underneath them burned. They'd prepared so carefully to tell me no, but for her, they leapt. That Sunday, I found myself at their kitchen table again, this time with color-coded tabs and expense sheets. Rachel sat across from me in a sweatshirt and messy bun, scrolling through flower arrangements while I categorized deposits. Dad passed by, patted me on the shoulder, and said, "Glad one of you got your mother's brain." Rachel grinned. I'm the dreamer. Amanda's the doer. It was a joke, but it splintered something. As the afternoon wore on, I flipped through receipts. Dress fittings, venue down payments, calligraphy invites. No corners were being cut, no tight year in sight. Want me to flag items we can scale back? I asked, voice low. Rachel blinked. Why? I glanced at Mom, expecting her to explain. Instead, she said without hesitation, There's no need, Amanda. Your father and I agreed. No compromises. I nodded, quiet, focused on the spreadsheet so they wouldn't see my face. Hours later, when everyone was asleep, I opened the last tab on the shared drive, a file marked Gift Contributions. It listed every family member who'd chipped in. Aunt Claire, Uncle Jim, even Rachel's college roommate. My name wasn't there. The next morning, I opened the spreadsheet again, telling myself it was just to double-check the figures, but the truth was uglier. I wanted to prove I'd imagined it, that I was reading too much into everything, that maybe I'd missed my name on the Gift Contributions tab by mistake. I hadn't. The list was clean, formatted, tidy. Claire, $2,000 for the rehearsal dinner. Jim, $20 for the bar. Ellie, $800 toward florals. 31 names in total. I searched Amanda just to be sure. Nothing. It shouldn't have mattered. I hadn't offered anything, not officially. But deep down, something told me no one had expected me to. They'd expected me to serve, not contribute. By Wednesday, I was back at the venue with Rachel for a walkthrough. The ballroom was massive, all crystal chandeliers and velvet curtains, and entirely unlike anything I'd pictured growing up. It was the kind of place you booked if you wanted people to whisper about the price tag. Rachel twirled in the middle of the dance floor, arms out. Can you believe it? I smiled because I was supposed to. It's beautiful. She took my hand and squeezed it. Thank you for being so amazing through all of this. Mom said we wouldn't be able to pull it off without you. I gave a half nod, the kind you do when a compliment tastes like aspirin. You okay? She asked, tilting her head. I hesitated. Then, yeah, just tired. Long week. That seemed to satisfy her. Later, we sat down with the event planner, a woman named Grace, who spoke in clipped, confident phrases and carried a leather binder that looked more expensive than my entire wardrobe. She walked us through the layout. Head table here, string quartet there, custom lighting imported from Savannah. Lighting? I asked, surprised. Isn't that built into the venue? Grace smiled. This is ambient atmosphere design. It's bespoke. Of course it was. Rachel nodded enthusiastically. Dad said to do whatever felt right. Make it timeless, his words. Right, I murmured. Timeless. On the ride back, I kept my eyes on the highway. Rachel was scrolling through her phone, probably sending another Pinterest board to the group chat. I didn't ask questions, I just drove. That night, I opened a folder I'd quietly created called Wedding Admin. It was supposed to be a basic budget tracker, but now it was something else. Evidence. I started pulling receipts into tabs, breaking them down, vendor fees, deposits, service charges. The total was just over $86,000. I stared at it for a long time, not because of the number, but because of the silence that surrounded it. There had never been a family conversation about this amount. No group call, no shared planning session. They'd just done it and assumed I'd adjust. I closed the folder and rubbed my eyes. Maybe this was normal. Maybe this is just what parents did when their youngest daughter got married. Maybe I was the weird one for noticing the imbalance, for caring. But still, I couldn't stop seeing it. The contrast, the disparity, the ease with which they gave, and the precision with which they withheld. I thought back to that afternoon in their kitchen, Mom sipping tea, wedding magazine open, her voice steady. Not after the year we've had. A lie delivered with such gentleness it almost passed as love. That weekend, I went to Rachel's dress fitting. She stood on a pedestal, surrounded by mirrors and soft lighting. She looked radiant, like someone being sculpted into her future. I held her veil as the seamstress adjusted the hem. You're going to be the most stunning bride, I whispered. Rachel's eyes met mine in the reflection. Only because I have you. And for a brief, brutal second, I believed her. By Monday, the wedding countdown was official, 90 days. Rachel had sent a color-coded Google sheet with weekly tasks linked to a timeline Grace had designed. I skimmed the checklist from work during my break. Half the assignments were already under my name: table chart, guest flow, backup logistics, vendor communication. No one had asked if I had time or interest. It was just assumed. That night, as I heated leftovers in my small apartment, my phone buzzed with Rachel's name. I answered instinctively, still holding the spoon. Hey, she said, breathless. Quick favor. What's up? I need you to do the dress pickup this Thursday. I have a tasting and Mom's tied up with the florist. You're off that day, right? I paused. I was going to catch up on sleep. She laughed like I was kidding. It's just the pickup. 40 minutes tops, please. I closed the fridge. Sure. I knew you'd say yes, she said brightly, because you're the responsible one. I bit my tongue. After the call, I sat at the edge of my couch and replayed that phrase. The responsible one, it had always sounded like a compliment. Until now, because the truth was, responsible had become their favorite way of saying burden carrier, the fixer, the one who made things easier by erasing herself. Thursday came and I found myself at the bridal boutique, signing for a garment bag that cost more than my rent. The clerk, a young woman with glossy hair and fake eyelashes, eyed me kindly. Are you the maid of honor? I hesitated. No, just the sister. She nodded. Well, she's lucky to have you. I carried the dress out like glass. It barely fit in my car. Every red light felt like a threat. When I dropped it off at Mom and Dad's house, she barely glanced up from her laptop. Oh, thank you, sweetheart. You're a lifesaver. I stood there for a moment, keys still in my hand. Where should I put it? In the guest room, and careful with the train. Rachel wants it steamed again before the rehearsal. I nodded and turned, but something in me stayed behind. Some small thread of dignity that refused to be tugged. As I drove away, my phone pinged again. Rachel, can you come to cake tasting Saturday, just in case we need to split? Then another. Rachel, and can you call the quartet about the processionals? Grace said they need a finalized list. I didn't reply. I spent the rest of the night staring at my own calendar. There were no birthdays, no parties, no dinners planned for me. My next 2 months were filled with events I didn't choose. In a wedding I wasn't part of. Except I was part of it. I was the glue, the silent engine, the one everyone trusted to not make noise. Saturday came, and I showed up to the cake tasting like I always did, early. Rachel was 20 minutes late. When she arrived, she was glowing from a facial appointment and clutching 2 oat milk lattes. "Did you get the calligraphy samples printed?" she asked between bites of lemon sponge. I blinked. "What samples?" She looked confused. "Didn't Mom forward you the email? You're handling signage." I didn't agree to that. Rachel waved her hand. "Well, you're so good at those things, I figured you wouldn't mind. Plus, you're not in the wedding party. You've got time." It landed sharp, too sharp to ignore. I sat back in my chair. "So I'm helping because I'm not important enough to include?" She blinked, surprised. "No, I mean, it's not like that. You're just the one we can count on." That word again, we. The table went quiet. Rachel picked at her cake. I watched her, wondering if she even realized what she'd said. Probably not. That was the hardest part. None of it was malicious, just habitual. They didn't think I'd mind because I never had. The following week, Rachel's bridal shower invitations were mailed. I didn't get one. I only found out about it because Aunt Marlene texted me asking what I was wearing. At first, I thought she meant the wedding, but then she added, "Can't wait to see everyone at the vineyard. Rachel said the theme's garden glam." Vineyard, theme, garden glam. I scrolled back through my texts, emails, calendar invites. Nothing. I even checked the physical mail, thinking maybe something had been lost. Nothing. That night, I sat on my living room floor with a cup of cold tea, staring at the RSVP list that Aunt Marlene had forwarded. 42 names, childhood friends, cousins, college roommates, distant relatives from Oregon, not mine. I called Rachel. She picked up on the third ring, her voice light. "Hey, what's up?" I swallowed hard. "I heard about the shower." "Oh," she said quickly. "Yeah, it came together kind of last minute. Mom and Grace handled most of it." "You weren't— Wait, didn't Mom tell you?" "No." A beat of silence, then a nervous laugh. "That's so weird. I totally thought you were in the loop." "I'm not invited?" Another pause, then her voice dropped into that half-guilty tone I'd heard before. "It's not like that. We just figured you've already been helping so much. You probably needed a break. It's just a bunch of girly stuff. Spa stations and lavender mocktails. You hate that stuff." I said nothing. "And you know," she added gently, "you're not a bridesmaid, so we didn't want you to feel obligated. We thought you'd understand." "We thought you'd understand." I nodded slowly, though she couldn't see me. "Sure, of course." "You're the best," she chirped. "Seriously, Amanda, I don't know how I'd do this without you." When we hung up, I stared at the phone like it had betrayed me. She sounded so genuine, so sweet, as if she hadn't just categorized me out of her joy. As if my absence was a gift to me. Saturday came, I didn't text, I didn't call. I watched the filtered photos roll in like a storm. Rachel posing beside a white peony tower, holding a glittered drink in one hand and a framed quote about soulmates in the other. Mom beaming in a pastel pantsuit, bridesmaids wrapped in matching silk robes, their names embroidered in cursive across their backs. There was a sign behind them that read, "The Women Who Made Me," and still, no one noticed I wasn't there. By Monday, Mom had left me a voicemail. "Hey honey, just checking in. Don't forget we have the seating chart meeting on Thursday. Bring your laptop. Love you." No mention of the shower, no apology, no explanation. That night, I added a new tab to the wedding folder. Tasks completed. It was longer than the guest list. As I scrolled through the spreadsheet, the numbness cracked. Beneath it was something unfamiliar. Resentment. Cold, quiet, tired of making excuses for people who didn't even realize I had. It wasn't about the bridal shower, or the missed invite, or the seating chart. It was about the years. Of being the first to offer help, the last to be asked, of being praised for my silence, rewarded for my utility, and then forgotten when celebration came. They thought I would understand. They were right. I finally did. Thursday came, and so did the seating chart meeting. I arrived exactly on time, laptop in hand, eyes hollow from a week of broken thoughts. Mom was already at the dining table, surrounded by notepads, a printed guest list, and her usual mug of chamomile. "Hi, sweetheart," she said, barely looking up. "We've got a lot to sort." I pulled out my laptop and opened the master file. "We do." She pointed to a spot on the paper. We need to be mindful of Uncle Ray's hearing issues. Put him away from the band. And keep cousins from Morgan near the back. They don't really know anyone. I made the changes without comment. 20 minutes in, I finally looked up. Why wasn't I invited to the shower? She blinked. What? The bridal shower, I said evenly. Everyone was there, I wasn't. She looked down at her notes as if something urgent had appeared. Oh, honey, that wasn't intentional. We thought it might not be your thing. Did you think I'd say no? She paused. Or did you think I wouldn't notice? Mom's face tightened. Amanda, don't be dramatic. I laughed. Short, breathless, right, God forbid I make a scene by asking why I'm invisible. You're not invisible, she said, sharper now. You've been involved in everything. Rachel relies on you. Relies on me, I echoed, but not enough to include me. She set her pen down. You always take things so personally. And there it was, the line I'd heard since I was old enough to understand dismissal in soft tones. I stared at her for a long moment, the buzz of the refrigerator suddenly loud in the quiet room. You know what I remember? I asked, voice calm. I remember Rachel's 16th birthday party, the one with the backyard lanterns and the s'mores bar. You made her a scrapbook. You got her a silver bracelet with her name engraved on it. Mom tilted her head. That was a sweet party. It was, I agreed. Mine was a store-bought cake in the kitchen. No one sang. She looked confused. You said you didn't want to fuss. I nodded slowly. I was 13. Silence. I closed the laptop. Let me know when you're ready to finalize the chart. I'll email you the updates. I stood up to leave, but she called after me. Amanda, don't make this about you. I turned back, just for a second. It's not. That's the problem. Back in my car, I sat with my hands on the wheel, not driving, not thinking, just existing. Something had snapped, but there was no sound. No break, just release. They didn't hate me, they just didn't see me. The following day, Rachel sent a selfie from the wedding shoe fitting. Wish you were here, she wrote. Grace says hi. I didn't respond. Instead, I opened a blank document and started typing a list. Every event I had organized, booked, coordinated. Every call made. Every spreadsheet sorted, every hour. At the bottom, I added one last entry, emotional cost, unquantified, unacknowledged, unpaid. I didn't know what I'd do with it yet, but I knew I was done waiting for gratitude that only came when it was convenient. The final straw arrived on a Thursday. I was finishing a double shift at the clinic, bone-tired and dreamless, when my phone buzzed with a message from Rachel. No greeting. Just a line. Hey, Mom and I were thinking, maybe it's better if you just come to the reception, not the ceremony. Simpler that way. I reread it 3 times. I thought it was a joke. Some kind of scheduling mix-up, but no. 30 minutes later, a second message confirmed it. Nothing personal, just trying to streamline. It's such a small bridal party and there's limited space at the front. Grace says it'll help things flow better. Nothing personal. I sat in my car, parked under a dying street lamp behind the clinic, hands frozen on the screen. The irony twisted in my throat. I had planned the logistics of this wedding down to the half minute, and now I was being removed from the part that mattered. No more spreadsheets, no more scheduling. This was a verdict, a quiet, brutal exile disguised as tidiness. I didn't reply, not right away. Instead, I stared through the windshield, watching rain slide down the glass like someone whispering apologies they didn't mean. When I got home, I opened the tasks completed document and read every line. Every forgotten hour, every silent contribution. Then I closed it. The next morning, I called Grace, the planner. My voice was calm, controlled. Hi, Grace. It's Amanda. I wanted to let you know I won't be managing vendor coordination anymore. You'll need to follow up directly with Rachel or Mom. A pause. Oh, she said, surprised. That's unexpected. I'm just simplifying, I said, echoing the line they used on me. Nothing personal, she hesitated. Is everything okay? I almost laughed. Actually, yeah. Everything's clearer now. When I hung up, I texted Rachel just 2 words. Got your message. She didn't reply. Not that day, not the next. Instead, I heard from Dad. He called late Sunday morning, voice tired but composed. Your mother tells me there's been some tension. I waited. She said you're upset about the ceremony thing. Tension implies 2 sides, I said. There's only one here. Amanda, let me ask you something. I cut in. When mom said they couldn't afford to help me with anything big, was that true? Silence. Back when she said it wasn't a good year financially, was that true? He cleared his throat. We didn't think you'd need anything. But you had $90,000 for Rachel's wedding. Amanda, I didn't wait for the rest. That's what this has always been, right? Not what I needed, what I was worth. More silence. Then, you're overreacting. There it was again. The family anthem. I ended the call without goodbye. That night, I went for a walk, past the quiet bookstore, the closed nail salon, the blinking corner light that never turned green fast enough. I didn't know where I was heading. I just needed to keep moving. And then I saw it. A new cafe, barely opened, a chalkboard sign in the window that read, "Now hiring, flexible shifts, all welcome." I stepped inside, asked for an application, and sat down at a corner table with a pen. It wasn't about needing the job. It was about needing a place where my presence would be requested. Not assumed, not ignored, not edited out. 3 days passed, not a word from anyone. No texts, no calls. No, "Are you okay?" or "What's going on?" Just silence. The kind you get when people are used to you coming back on your own. When they assume your loyalty has no expiration date. I showed up at my new cafe job in black jeans and a soft sweater. The manager, Dana, gave me a tour without fuss or scrutiny. No questions about why I was working here, what I was running from, just mutual respect and an apron. It was quiet, simple, mine. That morning, while organizing syrup bottles behind the bar, I heard my name. Amanda? I turned. It was Claire, my cousin. Her eyes widened as she took in the uniform. "Oh, wow. I didn't know you were working here," she said gently. "The family thought you were traveling or something." I smiled. "Nope, just needed a change." She hesitated. "Rachel's been kind of a mess. Grace keeps trying to get answers on the seating chart. Your mom can't find the vendor codes. Everyone's freaking out." I stirred the caramel sauce. "That sounds hard." Claire shifted her weight. "They didn't know you'd actually step back." "I didn't know they'd pretend I wasn't part of it." She nodded slowly. "Well, people are noticing now." Later that afternoon, while slicing lemons for tea service, I got a voicemail from Grace. Her voice was thin with stress. "Amanda, hi. I know you're stepping back, but your mother gave me the wrong invoice tracker, and we're trying to finalize vendor confirmations by Friday. Also, Rachel mentioned she never got the revised budget file. If you have any of that, we'd appreciate it." I deleted the message. By Friday, the ripples had grown into waves. Mom called twice, then once more. I didn't answer. Instead, I took my lunch break outside, on a bench under a crooked maple tree that still hadn't turned orange yet. It was peaceful, the kind of peace you only feel when you've stopped asking to be chosen. That night, Rachel showed up at the cafe. I saw her through the window first. Perfect hair, worried eyes, a coat too clean for weather like this. She stepped inside, scanning the tables until she found me behind the register. I stayed still. "Amanda?" she said, approaching. "Hey." "Hi. You're really not doing the wedding stuff anymore?" I nodded. She blinked. "But I thought you were just mad." "I thought you'd come back." "I always come back," I said quietly. Silence. "I didn't think it mattered this much," she said, shifting. "You're always so calm, so good at stuff. That doesn't mean it doesn't hurt." Rachel sat on a stool, shoulders drawn in. "I miss you." I met her eyes. "Then maybe you should have made space for me at something other than the cleanup table." She didn't argue. "I didn't ask for much," I said. "Just to be seen, not managed, not used. Just seen?" Rachel nodded slowly. "You were always the one holding everything together. I guess none of us thought about what that cost." "Now you're starting to." She opened her mouth, then closed it again. Eventually, she said, "Will you come to the ceremony?" I looked at her for a long time, then finally said, "Ask me like it's an invitation, not a favor." By the following week, Rachel was texting again, softly, carefully. The tone had changed. She asked how I was sleeping, if I wanted to grab coffee. She even offered to drop by the clinic with lunch, which she hadn't done in years. I didn't respond right away. I needed time to believe it wasn't just another tactic to reset the dynamic. By Friday, I agreed to meet. We sat at a cafe halfway between her apartment and the hospital, neutral ground. She brought pastries, I brought caution. "I've been thinking a lot," she said, unwrapping a croissant, "about how we've treated you." I let her talk. You've done more for this wedding than anyone. More than me, honestly. I nodded once. She reached into her bag and pulled out a cream envelope. This is for you. It's late, and honestly, I had to push for it. But here. I opened it. It was an invitation, a printed, gilded invitation with my name on it. Amanda, maid of honor. I stared at the words. We printed new ones, she said quickly. I mean, we had to reorder anyway, and I already told the planner to update the program. Everyone knows now. Now, I repeated. I should have asked you from the start, she admitted. But Mom thought it would be simpler if it was just my college girls. She said you'd probably be too busy or not care. I looked up. She said that? Rachel hesitated. She just didn't want to overwhelm you. I smiled thinly. By letting me stand next to my sister? She didn't mean it like that. She never does. Rachel reached for my hand, but I pulled back. What made you change your mind? She blinked. I just miss you. It didn't feel right anymore. I didn't believe her, not fully, but I took the envelope. Not because I needed the title, but because I needed proof. That I wasn't making all of this up, that it had been deliberate, and that someone finally was admitting it. That night, I got a call from Aunt Claire. Hey, she said, so excited you're finally in the bridal party. I smiled faintly. Took long enough? Well, Claire said carefully, they told us you declined, that you didn't want a title, that you hated all the planning stuff. My smile vanished. They told everyone that months ago, she continued, that you didn't want to be involved and just to help from the background. Honestly, we were all surprised. It didn't sound like you. I was silent. They said you preferred to be low-key. Low-key, invisible, expendable. I thanked her and hung up, hand shaking slightly. They hadn't just forgotten to include me. They'd rewritten the story, turned my silence into indifference, my helpfulness into avoidance, my loyalty into aloofness. I opened the closet and looked at the dress bag I hadn't touched in weeks. Inside was the bridesmaid gown I'd been told to order just in case. Before being told I wasn't in the lineup, before the program had been printed without me. They never thought I'd ask questions, never thought I'd compare stories. They'd buried me in goodwill and called it grace. The rehearsal dinner was held at a vineyard just outside town. The air smelled of rosemary and burnt wood, the hills rolling in soft gold around a long outdoor table dressed in eucalyptus runners and floating candles. I arrived precisely on time, alone. No one greeted me. Mom was at the far end, laughing with Rachel and Grace. Dad was nursing something dark in a crystal glass. I took the seat labeled Amanda, near the middle, next to a cousin's wife I barely knew. I wore the gown they'd asked me to. I smiled when spoken to. I toasted politely when Rachel's fiancé, Grant, stood and made a speech about love, family, and all the people who make days like this possible. He looked at Rachel. Rachel looked at Mom. No one looked at me. When dessert came, someone clinked a spoon against a glass and passed a mic to Rachel. She stood, glowing, and gave a speech about gratitude. How planning had been chaotic but wonderful. How her friends had lifted her. How Grace had saved the timeline. How Mom had been her rock. I waited. She didn't say my name. She sat down to applause. I stood up. No one had asked me to. No one expected it. But I did. And when the murmurs quieted, I picked up my glass and spoke. For those of you who don't know, I began, I'm Amanda, Rachel's older sister. I felt the shift, subtle but real. I've been behind most of the planning these past months. The spreadsheets, the vendor management, the rehearsal bookings, the contingency logistics. That was me. Some of you may not have known that. That's okay. I paused. Mom stiffened. Rachel froze. But I want to say this now, while everyone's here, not to ruin the mood, but to clarify it. Grace looked nervously at her notes. When this all started, I was told there wasn't enough money to help me with anything, not even emergencies. That this wasn't a good financial year, but somehow that same year, my parents found $90,000 to build this dream. Someone gasped softly. I didn't blink. I was told I wasn't included in the bridal party because I'd probably be too busy. That I prefer being low-key. That I didn't want a title. That I chose the background. I looked directly at Mom, then Rachel. But no one asked me what I wanted. The air was thin now. No one moved. I'm not saying this to guilt anyone, I said. I'm saying it because silence is how this kind of thing survives. Because pretending everything is fine while being erased in real time is a form of cruelty we don't talk about enough. Rachel's eyes were glossy. Mom's mouth opened slightly, but no words came. Dad stared into his drink. I love my sister, I said, louder now. But love without acknowledgement isn't connection, it's labor. I set my glass down. I wish you both the best tomorrow. But I won't be attending the ceremony. And then I sat down. No one applauded. No one moved. For the first time in years, I didn't care. I hadn't raised my voice. I hadn't made a scene. I had simply, finally, spoken. The drive home from the vineyard was dead quiet. No calls, no messages, just the hum of tires and the sound of something unraveling that had been too tight for too long. I didn't sleep that night. I lay on the couch staring at the ceiling, wondering if I'd overdone it. If I'd embarrassed Rachel, if I'd finally said too much after years of saying too little. But deep down, I knew. I hadn't said anything cruel, I hadn't lied, I just interrupted the fantasy they'd built, the one where I didn't have needs, just skills. At 8:12 the next morning, there was a knock at my door. Rachel. No makeup, no wedding hair, just a hoodie and jeans and eyes that looked like they hadn't rested either. I opened the door and said nothing. She stepped in without asking. I told Grace to run the morning setup without me, she said quietly, pacing once around the room. I needed to talk to you. I crossed my arms. I didn't know, she said. About the money, about what they said. I didn't know they told people you didn't want to be in the wedding. I thought you were just being chill, like always. I said nothing. She looked at me. You think I did it on purpose? I think you didn't ask, I said. She blinked. I think you liked having a maid without the title. You liked not having to worry if I'd say no. Because I never do. She sank into the edge of the couch. I never meant to erase you. But you didn't stop it either. We sat in silence for a moment. I've been asking myself something all night, she said finally. I looked at her. What if you're right? That stopped me. What if I just let them do it because it was easier? What if I stood there and let them turn you into background noise because I was afraid to push back? I didn't answer, not yet. I didn't know about the lies, she said again, quieter. But I didn't go looking for the truth either. I sat down across from her, letting the words hang. Rachel pulled something from her pocket, a folded piece of paper. I rewrote the program last night, cut out 2 readings, moved stuff around. There's room now. I opened it. My name was there. Amanda, maid of honor, speech at reception. She waited. I'm not going for you, I said. She nodded. I know. I'm not going for them. I know that too. I'm going because I earned that space, I said, voice steady. And I won't let them decide who belongs anymore. Rachel's eyes filled but didn't spill. Then I hope you show up. She stood, wiped her hands on her jeans, and walked to the door. Before she left, she turned. They don't know how to apologize, Amanda, but I do. I nodded once. Then I closed the door behind her and finally breathed. Not because things were fixed, but because someone finally had stopped pretending they weren't broken. The chapel was tucked between the vines and the hills, a white-painted structure with stained glass that filtered the light into warm amber pools on the stone floor. I parked near the back, not to hide, but to arrive unnoticed. I wanted no drama, no dramatics, no sudden music shift when I entered, just presence, real, grounded, and mine. I walked past the valet, who didn't recognize me, and slipped through the side path that led to the foyer. The guests were already seated. The music had started. I could have entered with the procession. I could have asked Grace to announce me. I could have reclaimed the spotlight they once denied me. But instead, I waited, and when the last bridesmaid reached the altar, I stepped into the aisle. Alone, no flower petals, no announcement, just steps. 1, 2, 3. Heads turned slowly, eyes flicked toward me. I caught Claire's surprised smile, Aunt Marlene's mouth falling open. Even Dad blinked, stunned. But I didn't look for Mom, and I didn't look for permission. I walked down the center like I belonged, not because they said I did, but because I chose to. Rachel stood at the altar, her bouquet trembling just slightly. When I reached her, I placed one hand on her arm. She mouthed, "Thank you." I gave the smallest nod. The ceremony began. The officiant spoke of growth, patience, grace. I watched, silent. I wasn't there to be moved. I was there to move through, to complete something. To prove, not to them, but to myself, that showing up on my terms was more powerful than any title ever offered late. When the vows ended and applause came, I didn't smile, but I stayed. I walked back down the aisle with Rachel, hand gently linked around her elbow. I felt her exhale beside me, part relief, part awe. In the reception tent, the room was flooded with fairy lights and low jazz. Tables shimmered with silver and blush. I stood near the edge, observing. A few guests came over to thank me for the speech, one I hadn't even given yet. The legend of my toast had apparently arrived before I did. I spotted Mom across the tent. She was holding a glass of rosé and talking to Grace. She didn't come over, not even then. It didn't hurt, not in the way it used to. Because now I could see it clearly. Her absence wasn't about me. It was about the version of me she preferred. The obedient one, the one who stayed useful and quiet. But that version had ended the moment I walked down the aisle without waiting for her eyes. Rachel found me near the edge of the dance floor, smiling nervously. "Your seat's up front." "I know." "You look suddenly calm." "I am." She bit her lip. "They don't know how to handle this." I raised an eyebrow. "Me? This version of you?" I finished my drink. "Then they can watch." I didn't need a microphone to say what mattered. I had already delivered it with my feet. The room dimmed as the dinner courses ended. A hush passed across the tent as the mic was passed hand to hand. From Grant's best man to Rachel's college roommate to a cousin who nervously recited a poem she'd written in high school. Laughter rose and dipped like waves. Then Grace's voice rang out. "And now we invite Amanda, maid of honor, to share a few words." A silence stretched. I rose slowly. No fanfare, no cheer. I walked to the front, heels clicking softly against the wooden platform they'd built for speeches. The mic was already warm from use. I wrapped my fingers around it like a lifeline. I took a breath. "My name is Amanda. I'm Rachel's sister." I scanned the room, eyes fixed, glasses clinked nervously. My mother shifted. "I wasn't going to speak tonight," I began. Not because I didn't have something to say, but because I wasn't sure anyone wanted to hear it. A ripple. "But I realized something recently. Silence doesn't protect people. It just buries things, and sometimes what we bury grows teeth." Now they were listening. I've watched Rachel grow from a girl who cried over scraped knees to a woman who built a love worth fighting for. I've also watched myself stay quiet, stay useful, stay out of the photo. A pause. I wasn't always graceful about it. I got bitter, I got tired, but bitterness is what happens when loyalty doesn't get returned. Rachel's chin dropped slightly. I saw her eyes, not ashamed, just awake. "I don't regret helping. I regret never asking why I had to." A longer pause. "I'm proud of Rachel, truly, but I want to say this to her and to the room, while the lights are still on and the food is still warm, love doesn't make you smaller. It doesn't ask you to shrink so someone else can stand taller. It doesn't reward silence and call it support." Somewhere in the back, someone exhaled. "To everyone here who's ever felt invisible at the table you helped set, I see you. To everyone who's been told their role is behind the curtain, I hope you walk through it." I looked at Rachel. "You built a life today, but I rebuilt one too, and that's worth celebrating." No applause, just a stillness that felt heavier than noise. Then, slowly, someone clapped, then another, then the room followed. But I wasn't waiting for applause. I set the mic down and walked away before the clapping ended. Rachel stood and hugged me in front of everyone. Not tightly, not tearfully, just enough. "Thank you," she whispered. I nodded, then I turned and saw Mom, standing still, arms crossed, mouth pressed into a line. But this time, her eyes didn't hold contempt. They held recognition. Maybe too late, but not invisible. The music swelled again after my speech, but the air had shifted. Guests moved slower. Conversations came in careful tones. Something had been uncaged, not feral, but undeniable. I lingered near the back of the tent, away from the dance floor. I watched Rachel laugh with Grant. I watched Aunt Marlene wipe her eyes and give me a long, approving nod. I watched Grace give instructions with trembling hands, as if worried one wrong word might trigger an aftershock. But most of all, I watched Mom. She hadn't moved, not when I left the stage, not when the room clapped, not when Rachel hugged me. She just stood by the floral arch, untouched by attention, drink in hand, staring out at nothing, until our eyes finally met. She blinked once, then started walking. Every step felt like a dare. Her heels hit the grass with a rhythm I knew too well, deliberate, controlled, rehearsed. She stopped inches from me. "You made quite a speech." I didn't flinch. "I made the only one I had." She took a sip of wine, then looked me up and down. So this is what you wanted? A moment? No, I said calmly. I wanted the truth to breathe. She scoffed. You could have come to us? I did, for years, with every spreadsheet, every call, every I'm fine when I wasn't. She opened her mouth, closed it, then said, You embarrassed your sister. I tilted my head. Did I, or did I embarrass you? Silence. I never asked for a spotlight, I continued. I asked not to be edited out of my own family. Her jaw clenched. You always read too deep into things. And you always hide behind soft tones, I shot back. But the message was always clear. Rachel got the shine, I got the silence. The wind moved through the tent, brushing the linens, rattling the candle flames. Is that what this is about? She said. Jealousy? I smiled, not cruelly, just tired. It's about erasure. And you don't get to call that jealousy just because it makes you uncomfortable. She didn't speak, and then, for the first time in my entire adult life, she looked uncertain. Do you know, I said, voice softer now, that Claire told me what you said about me? That I didn't want to be in the wedding? That I liked being behind the scenes? Her lips parted slightly. You rewrote me, I said, and the worst part is, you were so convincing I started believing it myself. A long pause. Then she said, You never fought back. I shouldn't have had to. She looked away. For once, she couldn't look at me and hold the lie, and that, somehow, was more honest than any apology I'd ever hoped for. She didn't say sorry, she didn't reach out, but she didn't look away again, and that was enough, for now. The sky over the vineyard had gone ink blue, stars just beginning to press through the darkness. The air buzzed with music and laughter, but gentler now, like the party knew something had shifted and was adjusting its tone. I wandered the perimeter of the tent, letting the scene unfold without me. People danced, people toasted, people whispered, but no one asked me where I had gone. And for once, that felt right. Rachel found me under a string of lights behind the tent, away from the crowd. I didn't know she'd corner you, she said quietly. She didn't corner me, I said. She finally stood still long enough to hear something. Rachel exhaled. She looked different after. Because I didn't cry. No, Rachel said, because you didn't apologize. We stood in silence for a moment, just listening to the sounds of celebration folding around us. Then I asked the question that had been sitting in the back of my throat all night. Why didn't she love me like she loved you? Rachel's face fell. I don't know, she whispered. I used to think maybe it was because you were always so independent, you didn't need anything, but now I think maybe that's just what she told herself to avoid admitting she gave you less. My chest tightened. She loved you, Rachel added. Just not well, I nodded. I don't think she even knows how deep it went, she said. How much of you got swallowed by keeping everything upright? I let her, I said. You survived her, Rachel corrected. And you still showed up. Just then, someone tapped a glass inside, a signal for final toasts. Rachel hesitated. Are you coming? I shook my head. Not tonight. She understood. I stayed outside as the voices rose inside again, champagne and praise flowing like confetti. I let the music wash over me like white noise. I didn't need another spotlight. I didn't need closure from a mic. But then I heard it, faint, from the edge of the tent. And my daughter Amanda? I froze. It was my mother's voice, who taught me more in the last 48 hours than I've learned in years. I stepped closer. Who reminded me that showing up isn't the same as being present, and that sometimes the quietest child is carrying the heaviest weight. There was a pause. I see you now, and I hope it's not too late to keep looking. Gasps, a few claps, then silence. I didn't move. I didn't cry, but something inside me, something bitter and tight, uncoiled. Not because it fixed anything, not because it rewrote the past, but because she'd said my name. Out loud, in front of people. And that was a start. I left the reception an hour before midnight. No goodbyes, no final glances. Just a walk to the gravel parking lot, heels in hand, the wind gently tugging at the hem of my dress. The night air was still, the vineyard bathed in a silver hush, distant laughter softening like the last notes of a song you didn't realize you'd memorized. I paused beside my car, not because I needed to, but because something in me wanted to take in the moment. The final moment of being the daughter who stayed quiet, of being the sister who filled the cracks, of being the helper they assumed would never step forward. I had spent years stitching myself into the background of this family, thinking that if I just did enough, stayed steady enough, small enough, someone would reach back. Tonight, I reached for myself instead. I opened the door, tossed my heels into the passenger seat, and started the engine. Headlights cut across the gravel. The vineyard gate stood open, unguarded. But just before I pulled away, I saw Rachel running across the lawn, shoes in hand, veil bouncing behind her like a whisper. I rolled down the window. She reached me breathless. "I didn't want you to disappear," she said. "I'm not disappearing." "You sure?" I nodded. "I'm just done standing behind people who won't stand beside me." She smiled, tired but whole. "I'm proud of you." "I'm proud of me too." She leaned in through the window. "Can we start again?" I thought about it, then I said, "We can start forward." She wiped her cheek, then stepped back. I drove, not fast, not like I was escaping, just steady, down the winding road lined with trees into the quiet miles where cell signals fade and thoughts get louder. I thought about Mom's voice. "I see you now." I didn't know if she meant it. I didn't know if it would last, but it didn't have to. Because now, I saw me. Clearly, unapologetically, entirely, and there was no version of this life where I would ever again shrink to fit their comfort. I reached the turnoff for the highway and didn't take it. Instead, I veered left, toward the coast, toward the dark water and the clean air and the soft sound of waves that never needed applause to keep going. For once, I didn't need a destination, just space. And the quiet thrill of knowing I wasn't lost. I'd just been waiting for the room to walk out of. Now that I had, there was no going back.